Hello, my name is Keshwani. It's Keshwani, Keshwani. We are here because we want to prepare for SAT. We have been solving SAT grammar questions out of this book here, the official SAT study guide. If you do not own this book already, purchase one immediately. You're going to need it. The problems that we are about to solve are the ones that you will find on page number 535. Please come to it. Page 535, and today is our lesson number 15. There are 18 of these questions. We have done most of those. Today, the ones that you see, they are 26 through 29. These 4 questions, these are hard questions on a scale of 1 through 18. These are the last 4, these are hard questions. Let's see what we can do. Number 26. We are told that traffic was heavy, so by the time Brienne finally arrived at the theater, traffic was heavy, so by the time she arrived at the theater. As you can see, there is nothing wrong with this part. This part is perfectly fine. We don't know what the answer is, but the answer is not in. By the time she arrived at the theater, this phrase is fine. We waited for her for an hour. The rest of the stuff you're not interested in because the problem lies here. If you just concentrate on this part, do not read anything beyond that. Just read it and digest it, analyze it, see if you find something wrong with it, and if you do, stop right there because there's no point reading the rest of it. We have to fix it. There's only one mistake, and I think we found it. It says, by the time she arrived at the theater, we waited for her for an hour. That's what it says. By the time she arrived at the theater, we waited for her for an hour. That's not going to work. Not we waited for an hour. We had been, not waited, but we had been waiting for an hour, or we had waited for her for an hour. Not just waited. We had been waiting for an hour. I think it's probably better. We had been waiting for an hour, missing the entire first act of the play. By the time she arrived, we had been waiting for her for an hour. Not waited for her for an hour. The answer is D. We had been waiting for her for an hour. Number 2. Number 27. Although its reputation is not as good as it once was, its reputation is not as good as it once was. Although its reputation is not as good as, which is fine, as it once was, which is fine. So far, this expression, this phrase has no mistake in it. It's not a sentence. This expression, this phrase, so far has no mistakes in it. Let's continue reading. The answer is not A or B. Answer has to be somewhere else. Problem has to be somewhere else. The university is still proud of. The university is still proud of their grads. And what they're hoping is that you will forget the fact that this there, you'll forget that this there actually doesn't belong there by getting too engrossed in the fact that they're talking about graduates, plural. Yes, it is plural, it is grads, it is plural, but that's not the subject of the sentence. The subject of the sentence is the university. And we are told that this university is proud, forget about the part still, is proud of their students. It's not going to be their students, we're talking about university, a singular university, one university. The university is proud of Not their student, its student. So the university is proud of its student. The answer is C. Let's go on then. The penultimate one, the second to the last one. Although familiar to us from representation in the ancient art, the chariots are rare museum artifacts because by the 6th century BC, they were no longer used in the battle. What can you do with this sentence? Although they are familiar to us, in reality, they are artifacts of museums because they hadn't been used, or rather they haven't been used because they haven't been used for centuries. Although they are familiar to us, although we are familiar to them, we know what they look like from the renditions in the books and so forth, from their representation in ancient art that they put it, as they put it, or as I put it, from their renditions and from their drawings in the books and so forth. Although we are familiar with them, they are in fact artifacts of museums. They are something that one expects to find in museums because by the 6th century BC, they were no longer used in battle. They were no longer used. This sentence is fine. There is nothing wrong with it. The answer is E. The answer is E. Although, let's see how I put it. Sometimes I make too many changes. I go bonkers. I make too many changes. Let's see how I put it. Let's just to make sure that if it makes sense. Although, because sometimes I leave out a word inadvertently, and then as far as I'm concerned, it makes sense in my mind. But by having left out one or two words on the blackboard, they come across as very silly. Although they are familiar to us, in reality, they are artifacts of museum. And don't worry about the fact that I might have misspelled some words. They are artifacts of museums because they haven't been used for centuries in our daily lives, that is. In this case, in the battles. So we are familiar with them, but they really belong to the museum. Let's do the last one. A volunteer organization, Covington Soup Kitchen, has been feeding. The soup kitchen has been feeding needy families. Now, had this been the end of the sentence, soup kitchen has been feeding needy families for many years now. Had been the sentence the way that I put it, would have been fine. That tells us that the answer is not A. Has been feeding. Answer is not A. Since 1997. There you go. That's the end of your sentence. Had this been the sentence here, that the soup kitchen, our local soup kitchen, has been feeding needy families since 1977. There is nothing wrong with this sentence, which tells us that the answer is not A, answer is not B. You do not know what the answer is, but it's not A or B. Let's keep reading. Soup kitchen has been feeding needy families since 1977. They go on to say, annually distributing nearly £1 million of food each year. Now here's another sentence for you. Listen carefully. Here's another sentence for you. I pay tremendous amount in taxes. Annually, I have been paying $10 to IRS every year. One more time if you like. 2 sentences. I have been paying tremendous amount of money in taxes. Annually, I have been paying $10 every year. You see the problem? Annually, I have been paying $10 every year. It is redundant. It is redundant. It doesn't work that way. We already said annually. If you already mentioned annually, it cannot be, as I said before, it doesn't make sense to say lots of tourists come to our country annually, almost 10 million of them show up every year. It doesn't work that way. Annually, almost 10 million of them show up every year. It's redundant. The way to fix this sentence is to simply get rid of these 2 words. These 2 words do not belong there. This is a strange kind because typically when we cross a word out in the underlined portion, we replace it with some other correction. Here the correction is that we simply need to eliminate these 2 words because it makes the sentence redundant. It makes the idea redundant. We're done with this part. I will see you tomorrow where we'll begin exam number 4. Alright? Bye now.